This is Vic Meets. I'm Victoria Jane, and I'm in London. In Levi's, I'm wearing Levi's, and I'm with the beautiful, the lovely Amber Simone, who I absolutely adore. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you. I mean, you've been a big support of my last project, and we did Global Soul together, and when you asked me to come down today, I just obviously want to come and hang out with you. It's always nice to have a personal relationship with someone who's championed you so hard, so thank you.
Oh, you're actually going to make me cry. Honestly, that's so lovely. I have to say, Amber's one of the first voices, probably one of the first voices I heard that really, I was fully blown away with in a way I really can't describe. I have to say that because obviously growing up I listened to so many different types of music and there's so many songs that will hit me, but because I had never heard of you before and then I listened to Potential, and that song, honestly, I can't describe how I was like, who is this person? And then I got a double whammy. She's from the UK. She's from London. How have I not heard of her? And then I looked at your visuals and your kind of socials and I was like, this is literally a star here. Why have I not heard of her? Like how? And then I was just an instant fan. So yeah, that's why I have always loved you so much. But I do want to kind of just go straight to the start. And for you, your childhood, kind of how music has been in your life growing up or how it hasn't, and kind of where that love of music has come from.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm like, woo! I need that as my ringtone whenever I'm doubting myself, a little voice memo to be like, what the Vic thing? That means a lot as well, especially how you mentioned Potential. That's the first song that I put out where I produced it, and that's 100% me. Had my friend help me finish it off, put some extra bits in it, but that's the first thing I ever put out. That was 100% everything in my head alone, basically recorded and put out. So it's really, it means a lot that that's been a song that you've gravitated towards and really pushed, and that so many people still come up to me. I mean, I released that song 2 years ago, and people are still coming at me for that, and it was it's been an amazing thing to be pushed. A bit of gratification of you're doing the right thing, you're on the right path. You don't need to necessarily depend on other people so much to create good work. So that's the first point. So thank you. And musically, I grew up in a house where my dad DJ'd and my mum was a dancer. I used to watch my mum on Top of the Pops on in the mornings on weekends and stuff, and I used to watch her at the Brits. She'd danced with Beyonce at one point.
What?
Yes, I grew up in a house of entertainers in a way, and my mum was always getting us to dance and all sorts of rubbish. But I mean, I was always the shy one. My brother and sister were way more out there than me, and I was kind of awkward, and I mean to an extent still am, but I love it. And I think as I grew up, my mum really wanted to push all of us to do arts in some capacity, and I was like, I'm not doing that. That's exactly you want to rebel. Most people are oh, don't do the arts, be a doctor, and I was like, I'm not doing the arts. Yeah. And so I rebelled against it for a bit, and then. But music was always around in the house and played, and records were always on, and used to listen to lots of soul and Angie Stone and D'Angelo and stuff in the car with my mum, and then my dad used to play loads of funky house and garage and stuff like that. So it was really eclectic and very UK in a lot of ways in terms of the dance influences, but a lot of the American influence from the 90s and early 2000s of house soul really was a big part of the scene at that point. But yeah, I mean, I picked up a guitar one weekend at my grandma's when I was really bored. It was the summer holidays, and that was basically the start of it all kind of coming together. I stopped my dream of becoming a doctor. Damn! But yeah, it was a very natural progression, and I think I tried to push away all of the influences of my childhood growing up around lots of creative people. And the typical teenage thing is to want to rebel, and mine was against the thing that's normal to rebel against. And just kind of fell into it really, and just loved it, and it was the thing that I wanted to do every day, all the time, and made school bands, and released like my first tune anonymously with like a close friend of mine called Joe Hertz. Yeah, my friend, there's a producer called Joe Hertz.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's cool. Like we've been friends since I was 15. And yeah, when I was still doing my GCSEs, we put a song out called At Your Touch. And that like was in the era of like SoundCloud and Majestic Casual and like things like that on YouTube, and that did really well. And so we just kept making music together, and it's grown ever since, you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is explaining a lot, because I can hear like this kind of start of your journey in your music now, in a way. What was the kind of moment or a few moments that like when you were starting to release music? Because I feel like it was 2017 that I know that, like when I was looking at your discography, that you kind of started releasing like Taught Me Better? Taught Me Better, yeah, Taught Me Better, and then you started releasing actual like proper singles under you and Amber Simone. So what moment was it that you kind of thought like, I'm actually good at this and I can actually like make this work? Or did you like, have you had that moment yet?
I think microphone. I think the first like load of tunes we put out was just putting things out for the love of it, and I suppose because I started making music when I was like 15, a lot of the kind of natural progression of who you are as a person is something that went hand in hand with knowing what kind of music I wanted to make. Like you don't really know who you are when you're 16. You don't know like what you stand for necessarily. You kind of grow into that, and like your experiences form that. And I think the same journey happened simultaneously with me in music. I think I started kind of more on the dance side of things. Things were way more disco inspired. Like I was listening to a lot of disco. My first EP was directed with that intention of like I just discovered disco, and was like heavy into listening to that and like going out, and I kind of based the whole concept of that EP around like a morning that I was on a rooftop watching the sun come up with my friends. And like wanting it to feel like that moment. And then I think there was a bit of time between that project and the latest project, Black No Sugar, and that point was when I kind of figured out who I was and like what I wanted to say as a person, as an artist, and how those two things are the same thing. Rather than it being like a separation of like, okay, who am I when I'm Amber Simone, versus like, that just is me, and like, what do I care about, and what do I want to talk about to, and like, who do I want to communicate to, and sonically, again, like, what are my roots and what resonates with me, and I want to be empowered in terms of being more in control of making the music, and all of that kind of came together and is what informed Black No Sugar. So then that's kind of like, that's an example of all of those, that in a melting pot of like, okay, I figured out who I am, what direction I want to go in, what my influences are, what I want to say, what's important to me. Visually, what do I love? And how do I create a world that allows people to step into that and feel closer to what I've got to say and what I care about. And I think you'll see like the growth between those mindsets between the two projects.
Yeah, because I feel like the start is what you said. You've had a bit of a shift. The stuff that you've released in your early stages is still so good though, and I still think it has a place. Like that's what I love about music. It always has a place for someone, and someone's is. It's just that you as an artist may not like love it as much as the stuff.
And that's the thing. Like I see it as like music is the great thing about creativity is you can look at it as like a snapshot into a time. Like at that time, I can look back and remember those things. Like that's what I was interested in. That's the place I was at in my like personal development. Those are the producers I was hanging around with and the friendships that I made, and it definitely is like a snapshot into like different parts of your life that then other people can, love and get to know. But essentially, like it's also your own personal journey spelt out in tunes, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, Black No Sugar, you kind of just touched on it, but it's a body of work that is very cohesive sounding. It's very distinct. I would say your overall style and like branding as an artist and that last body of work is very distinct and very you. But to people who aren't familiar with it, how would you describe that body of work and actually making it, putting it together, writing it, and what it kind of, you just touched on what it means to you, but to people who aren't familiar with it and what it the themes and issues and what it talks about.
So the essentially the body of work and like the new project, going back to the whole thing about self-discovery, self-acceptance, also about capturing the first moment that I felt like a woman and not a little girl anymore, and like capturing what that meant. And so like doing the press shots were like the first time that I ever felt sexy, for example. And like the music, the themes throughout it about Black No Sugar itself is about, essentially it's a song to my younger self and a song to my younger siblings. I've got really small siblings who are like 3 and 8, and it was like preparing for the fact that they are going to be exposed to the same experiences I've been exposed to as a mixed race woman. And a lot of that, I grew up in my teens in an area that was predominantly white, and so like struggled a lot around identity and felt almost like I needed to retreat and like be a funny person because I was never going to be anything other than that. And like it took a while to love myself out of that environment, and it's about that. And going through a breakup, that trying to hold on to a relationship that you can see is falling apart, but you still see all the potential in someone and what it could be, and questioning whether that's something that you that you should chase or if it's something that you should let go. And then Life's Pleasure is, I suppose, kind of being nostalgic about kind of being in a dream state where everything's great and then where the chaos hits. And I think that kind of sonically that transition happens as well as, in the lyrical content. But it was just like, it's been really fun just being able to conceptualize different ideas that felt really true to me in that moment and experiment with how sonically I could match lyrical content to those themes and bring in elements like live instrumentation as well, being like the heartbeat of the whole project. Every single song was basically played with like drums and then me playing bass or guitar, writing the song kind of in that format and then like adding the other elements. So that's how it was different as well. And I think that's kind of how I always want to write music moving forward. Just like, how is it going to be played? How is it going to be played by a live band? How can we strip it down? And is the song still going to be as good in that format? And like, it really being about like what's being said and the song.
And I kind of want to just touch on what you said about, like growing up and having those identity issues as a mixed race woman, because I feel like I have had those as well. It comes from like not knowing so much about your background and being in those environments, like in a predominantly white area. And how have you kind of dealt with that growing up and kind of found out more about yourself and your heritage and stepped into more of you? How have you?
I think I always knew quite a bit about my heritage. Like my dad's Jamaican and then my mum is adopted. So like that was kind of always a bit of a weird thing. She kind of looks like she could be a load of different things. We found out that she's like South Asian now from like some DNA tests, mixed with like Scottish or Irish or something. So like that's always been a bit of a weird one. And I think like a bit of the identity thing comes from like having an adopted parent who didn't feel connected to her like white adoptive parents who had no kind of real clue on where she was from. And so like that trickles down into then having, a Caribbean dad, and then like growing up my like most kind of informative years, like to become an adult, like in your teens, then growing up in an area where like being a teenager is hard enough, and being different than a teenager in an area, where people don't look like you, there's another layer to it. But I think a lot of it just came from, I wasn't deprived of knowing about like my Jamaican heritage, and then it's been a whole thing about finding out about my mum's side of things gradually. But I think it's about understanding the the mixed experience, the black experience is different for everybody. And, you know, there can also be a lot of conversations like within the community itself about like, you're not black enough or like, you're not white enough. And that exists from both angles. And it's just being, you know, coming forward and being like, well, I am what I am. Like, no one's going to be able to tell me that I'm not one or the other. And like, that's good enough. And I suppose the lyrics of Black No Sugar is about, a lot of people kind of look at it quite literally, like I'm black, no sugar, there's no white, but that's like completely not what that is, because I'm of mixed heritage, so that like couldn't happen. It's about being black, mixed, whatever way you are, but not needing to sweeten the deal to be palatable. Like, this is me. And like, I came into that just through like the process of making new music, going out with different friends, falling in love, like learning how to finally manage my hair, learning the things about my individualism that made me feel like I was, you know, like was special, and like seeing it more as a power than like a hindrance.
Yeah. That's a lot to kind of digest, but it makes so much sense. And again, to your first point, it kind of reflects your music and how you've kind of grown as an artist, with growing in yourself at the same time. I have to talk about the Black No Sugar visual film kind of movie. Because the music is very cinematic as well. So what made you decide to shoot that? For those of you who don't know, Amber did like a whole film, kind of like a mini film with her body of work, basically. So you can listen to the body of work, but you can also watch it and listen. So yeah, how was that, putting that together, making it, and what made you have that idea instead of just doing like music videos for each?
I suppose like making the songs is the fun part, and then like I suppose like I've definitely taken more of a back seat generally in terms of like making music itself, in terms of production in my previous project, and took a back seat when it came to the visuals. And I think that's like where I think that you can see that, because it's a very different aesthetic, a very different kind of soundscape, and like I really wanted to be more empowered and being like, okay, cool, this is the moment that I feel the most me and know who I am the most. Like, how can I better convey those things and make sure that everything links? And so the heartbeat of the project essentially being about live music, and like the inspiration behind it about live instrumentation, and that's basically the core of how we wrote all of the songs. And the reason I even wanted to start music was because of seeing live music at a festival when I was young. I really, really wanted that to be like at the forefront of being able to communicate that to people, because I also understand that sometimes people hear music and like it might take another element for them to get it. And so like I was like, okay, so how can I better communicate like what this means? So in terms of that was about, it has to be a live band. That's kind of what it was written with, that intention. So let's just do that. And I did like a load of research and looked at different live band things, and I was like, everything just feels the same. Like when I'm seeing things, there might be a cool background or whatever, but I was just like, I've not really seen anyone combine a music video energy to a live set up and like a story around it, essentially. So I spoke to a few people. I knew I wanted it to be live. I knew that I wanted it to feel like a music video, and spoke to a few directors, and then I met this amazing woman called Sophie Jones, who is my girl now. Like, and it's amazing like working with another female creator. And yeah, she just got it. Like, I sent her mood boards, she sent me back mood boards, like everything was just on point. She sent me some other contacts who helped with the project, like my heartbeat now, Jonathan, who styles me for these things, and like, you know, George Trosh, who makes all of the dresses, all my performance dresses, and all the dresses that were made for the film. Like, we created this like world essentially. She just got it. Sometimes people just do, and we were able to kind of manifest that together. And yeah, it's essentially exactly that. It's a live video in a jazz club, and I basically wanted it to feel like a reintroduction to myself, outside of the first project. Like, okay, cool, I'm grown now. I did that when I was like in my early 20s. We're a bit older, know what we're about, step into the world and like rediscover what Amber Simone is. And I think, you know, the way that it kind of moves through this space and around the performances, it definitely feels very immersive, and that's how I wanted it to be. So that was the intention.
That's mad. To be fair, and I think you kind of, with that intention behind, you did it so well. I've shown that to so many people, like, watch this please, it's so cool. so cool. And I kind of want to also touch on the fact that obviously you've got a lovely manager behind you, helping. How important has it been for you to have kind of the right people around you, that team, and also just navigating the music industry as a woman, as a female? How has that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really important. I think, like, I started this journey when I was 15, 16, and had previous managers and, you know, like, visions for how things were meant to pan out, not quite aligning at that time, and, you know, that relationship kind of falling apart, really hindering my idea of whether I felt music was for me and if I wanted to continue making music, because I didn't really feel towards the end of that relationship that empowered. And yeah, like my current managers, they're amazing. Becky Tong and Adam Callan, they've been with me since I was like 19, and just been like, we really believe in you. Anything that you want to do, we're going to find a way to make that happen. And so, like, you know, they've been a label, they've been managers, they've been support systems, therapists. Like, they go through the whole journey with me, you know, and I literally don't know how I'd have done it without them. Finding a way to make this film, you know, being an independent artist, and that kind of being the crux of how things are, means that there's not loads of people always throwing money at things, and it's like, you know, having a great team around you that truly believe in you really kind of shines through in making you believe that you can do it in the moments where you're doubting things as well. So they've been super, super important.
Amazing. And what is next for Amber? Because I feel like, obviously, this is the bit where I'm just like,
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I also want to know, at the live show, if you come in, are you going to do any exclusives? Or is it going to be...
I might.
What is next for Amber? What can we expect?
I'm really, really excited. I mean, like, last year was like heavy, playing loads of live music. Yeah. You know, I'm lucky enough to be part of another project, which is touring loads. Big up Frank Moody, boom, boom. But like for my own project, you know, because that was so busy, had some kind of ideas floating about, but this year's the focus is to hopefully get 2 projects out. That's my goal. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, we're gonna started the writing for it, but like there's like one kind of focused concept and a separate focused concept. So we're gonna get me in a stripped format, and then hopefully some more songs in the full kind of cinematic scope.
That.
So
I love that.
fingers crossed. I'm really excited about it.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait at all. And then obviously you're doing the live. Whoa, obviously you're doing the live show. For me, that's going to be amazing. I can't wait to hear you perform. But also, I want to know one thing that I probably don't know about you. Could be anything at all.
You don't know about me. Just anything.
Anything. Everyone gets baffled by this question.
Oh, I can dance salsa.
Really?
Oh.
You're going to have to teach me something then. That's a nice little fact.
Yeah.
I love that. And then just plug your socials as well.
Yeah, so I'm the Amber Simone on all socials. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. The Amber Simone. So, yeah.
All that jazz.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited. Be there. And if you are watching this and it's already happened, then go and listen to Amber anyway. Yeah.